Ask the Elder, bi-monthly commentary, and a host of panelists concerned for humanity. So don't touch that dial. Stay tuned for your host, Daniel Israel, and Signs of the Times. Hi, welcome to Signs of the Times. I'm your host, Daniel Israel. This program is designed to serve as a forum for discussion of the social, economic, and political conditions of the world and local community. The panelists that appear on Signs of the Times are individuals who, despite their diversity, have a common bond which links them together, and that is their study of history and their concern for humanity. Tonight we have, once again, the Ask the Elder segment, where we bring on the resident elder of the program, that being Yaakov ben Israel. He's the elder priest of the New Covenant Congregation of Israel. And we have him here to give us insight on the many different things taking place around the world. And also tonight in particular, he brought with him a special treat for us all. Some of you have called and requested a calendar, one that the New Covenant Congregation puts together. And tonight the elders brought it with us to share it with us and some of the content thereof. But also, we welcome your phone calls at 770-559-2999. That's 770-559-2999. This is a live broadcast, so indeed, we welcome your phone calls. Without further ado, let me introduce our special guest for tonight, the elder priest of the New Covenant Congregation of Israel, Yaakov ben Israel.
Shalom.
Shalom, Elder. How you doing?
Oh, pretty good.
Elder, as I mentioned, you brought with you tonight a treat for us, and that is something that some callers have requested. People calling after the program have called to request one of the 1998 Hebrew calendars. Mm-hmm. And if I may, I'd like to read the front cover of it to give people an idea of what it says. As a matter of fact, hopefully we can pick it up on the screen here to let the viewers see what we're talking about. The title of the calendar is the 1998 Hebrew calendar, and the title here is American Negro. This is your life, past and present. I'll just read a couple quotes here. It says, "For it shall come to pass in that day, saith Yahweh of hosts, that I will break his yoke from off your neck, and will burst your bonds, and strangers shall no more serve themselves of him." Mm-hmm. That's Jeremiah 30:8. Mm-hmm. And also from Jeremiah it says, "Therefore fear you not, O my servant Jacob, saith Yahweh. Mm-hmm. Neither be dismayed, O Israel. Mm-hmm. For lo, I will save thee from afar, and thy seed from the land of their captivity. Mm-hmm. And Jacob shall return, and shall be in rest, and be quiet, and none shall make him afraid." Mm-hmm. And if you see on the screen there's a depiction of the front cover of the calendar. And Elder, what we'd like to do tonight is to get you to give us some insight into this very, like a lot of hard work went into this calendar, brother. It is a very beautiful calendar.
And sisters, the people of the congregation really outdid themselves on this calendar this year. It has more information than any calendar that we put out, and it contains a lot of history about our past, when we were in our land, right. And it came about the slavery that we was in Africa, right. And then the Middle Passage, what happened during the Middle Passage, and what happened to us in America. And it also has quotes of the New Covenant in there that tells about our deliverance, which our forefathers sang about a long time ago. So I think they really outdid themselves, and I just wish to say that, may Yahweh add a blessing to the congregation for that piece of information.
Absolutely. Now, I read a quote or two from the front cover here. Give us some understanding as to these two quotes, and what is it saying to us?
Well, the first one, the first quote that says, "For it shall come to pass in that day, saith Yahweh of hosts, that I will break his yoke from off your neck." Mm-hmm. See, he was telling us in Jeremiah 30th chapter, part of the new covenant, that when the Messiah returns, the yoke is going to be broke off our people's neck, and then we're going to return to our land. He's going to gather us from the four corners of the earth, as verified by other prophets, and bring us back to our own land, and we're going to be at rest. Well, and you have to ask yourself, why should the earth have peace? As long as God's people don't have peace, the earth will never have peace. This is why they've always had pseudo peace, but it never lasted any time. This is why they had so many world wars and so forth, simply because Yahweh told the nations, say, whosoever touch you, touch the apple of my eye. And all of the nations was in on that slave trade thing, you see. So that's what that first quote is about. And the one in Jeremiah 30 and verse 10, therefore, fear you not, O my servant Yaakov, saith Yahweh, neither be dismayed, O Israel, for lo, I will save you from far, and your seed from the land of their captivity. See, and this is what basically the new covenant is all about. The first job that the Messiah has to do when he come here is to put down all rule. His next job is to gather his people from the four corners of the earth, you see, and then begin to set up a governmental system on this earth that's gonna keep the earth in peace for 1,000 years. And this is what man had. This is the deception that's taught there's a deception rather that's taught through the New Testament. See, what they say is this: well, we going all off to heaven before any of that stuff start, and we're going to be with the Messiah, and then we're going to come back down to the earth. But that disproves what the angel told Daniel, John the Revelator, rather, because in the 14th chapter of John the Revelator, we find that 144,000 was the first fruits to God and the Lamb. So if that 144,000 from the tribes of the children of Israel was the first fruits to the Lamb, then how is it that the church, all of a sudden, the church, the Christian church, now understand now, Christ was King of the Jews, right? The Christian church, the same one that gave us Christmas, Santa Claus, and Peter Rabbit, Valentine's Day, and all that other junk, right? Now they're taking up tithes, which they used to didn't do, right? Them same folks that changed the Sabbath day from Saturday to Sunday is telling me, say, hey, we going off to heaven and be with the Lord. Y'all ain't gonna rule nothing. Then we gonna come back down and rule. Well, that's not according to what the scriptures say. How can we be at rest and in peace when we still are in captivity under the other nations?
Now, you know, it's interesting. I want to get to a point that you mentioned about the tithes and so forth, and really not to belabor that point, but it is interesting that the churches say, well, they take up tithes, but they say we're not under law. And considering that the tithes went to the Levites, who were the priests, so are we to assume that what they're implying is that the preachers in these churches are the priests indeed, and therefore they should get all the tithe, even though they say we're not under law?
Well, didn't the Christians tell us that God, didn't they tell us that God took this thing and gave it from us and gave it to the Gentiles? Well, then, if that's the case, why did he send his son to die for his blood to seal that new covenant with us that's made in Hebrews 8 chapter? If that's the case, then we might as well tear all the prophets out the book. And if we can do that, then we can say, well, hey, you know, there truly is no God. But we know that there's a creator. See, we can tell that by our current condition today. When we go in and read some excerpts from the curses that was put on us, and it's in that calendar there, in Deuteronomy 28 chapter, when we go read those, we can very well see that Yahweh put these things upon us because we didn't do what he said to. But see, there's always been a remnant that has walked that way. I mean, all of us sin and come short of God's glory. None of us are gods. But there's a group of people, and there's always been a remnant that has walked that way, that has taught the truth in the Word of God. And guess what? They were ostracized by the people. And consider this. When the Messiah came, he was ostracized by the people because he taught our fathers, our preachers and politicians and lawyers had got off into a bunch of paganism, you see. And what we try to do in this calendar here is show you exactly what happened to our people, and according to the prophets, what's going to happen to our people. And the thing of it is this: these prophets are making themselves manifest. But then when you go to the church, the only part you get is the last little part of the book.
Right.
See, and you can take that last little part. How you think they got so many different denominations?
From the last part.
The last little part of the book.
Right.
They didn't go back and lay down the foundation. If they laid down the foundation, they would have found out that when the apostles went out, the apostles were converting the nations to become proselytes to Judaism.
Well, you know, some people say that ain't right. You shouldn't impose your beliefs on me.
Brother, one of these days, my brother's going to impose his rights on everybody. You see, so when they get to talk about what you can't impose, that's what God did. He said, you shall and you shall not.
But I don't feel like that's right.
That's their feeling is what got us in slavery today.
Right.
See, our fathers feel the way they felt about things. And people are quick to tell you that's what I think,
right.
and I feel like the scripture says. No, but old man, who are you that you reply against God?
Right.
But see, people are quick to try to let their little light shine,
right.
and when they open their mouth, you can tell where they got their teachings from.
That they're in darkness.
Right.
Let me ask you something. You know, the calendar is called the American Negro, This Is Your Life. Many people just don't know that the word Negro is a Spanish word for black.
Right.
So the American black, this is your life, because we haven't been associated with a land, a language, or a culture. Right. So we're only just been associated with a color.
Right. Right.
So if this is our life, past and present, now you alluded to something earlier, you actually said something earlier that we would be in captivity and be saved out of captivity. Mm-hmm. Now, I'm sure it'd be very difficult to convince the American black or the American Negro that they're in captivity. The reason I say that, a couple weeks ago in the American Atlanta Journal-Constitution, in the perspective section in the Sunday's paper, it was a big article that says unlocking black wealth, and basically saying that it's the $456 billion that flows through the hands of the American Negro shows that there's some prosperity among us.
It is.
So how can you convince one who's prospering that they're captives?
Okay, well, let's go back in history. Now, during the Babylonian captivity, Daniel was the prime minister. Well, he was next to the king. Right. What's the same difference?
Prime minister.
He was the prime minister of Babylon.
Okay.
Look at Esther. Esther became queen. You see, so our people did so good in captivity that when they got ready to go back to the land, only 10% of the people wanted to return. You see, there's always been that 10% that's doing good.
Right.
But when you consider that it's well over 250,000 babies being born every day, and America not being able, I mean, it's coming down to a food shortage, right?
Right.
Well, look at our position. Look at our position. At the end of the day, right now, if the American government say, okay, everybody go home, we're going to close up country, right?
Right.
Okay. At the end of the day, the Japanese can go back to Japan.
Right.
I mean, and be accepted.
Right.
Right? The Chinese can go back to China. The Africans can go back to Africa, but we can't go any place. The Hispanics, they can go back to Mexico or Puerto Rico, right, wherever they need to go. You know, the Europeans can go back over to Europe, but we haven't got any place to go.
What about Africa?
Africa. How many brothers do you know that's married to an African woman?
Not many.
Okay. You know why? They're Africans. We're blacks. It's a difference. Right. It's a difference between them. It's the reason why they haven't. We started calling ourselves African American, but the nations never called us Africans. You see, we were the ones that was called Africans. It was the Hebrew Israelites that were sold to the Egyptians. And the Egyptians were the ones that sold us right back to the Europeans, and they brought us through here as slaves. And our doctrine and our wealth goes right back to the people we get it from. See, we don't have any currency that represent our nation.
Right.
See, we don't have any flag that represent our nation.
Right.
Now, if you put all us in a room with a lot of African flags in there and say, okay, choose the country you come from, all of us come up with a different flag.
Right.
Because we don't know anything about Africa. The only thing that we read about Africa was in the books. But see, Our forefathers knew something about Israel. They said, I'm going down to the River Jordan one of these days. You see, swing low, sweet chariot, I looked over Jordan, and what did I see? So our forefathers knew what the deal was, and they tried to pass it on. But see, you got to understand, the master's pretty slick. See, as soon as you think you got a handle on things, we thought we had a handle on things by telling our children what the deal was in the songs, right? Then they gave us gospels. Then once we got the Gospels, brother, we lost all of our heritage. We lost all of that history. And then what we started to do was this, as we began to get jobs. If you notice, once the Civil Rights Movement came through, brother, we refused to spend our monies in our neighborhoods.
Well, it's interesting that you say that, because that's one thing that article alluded to, that we don't support black businesses.
Right.
You know, you mentioned something about our heritage and so forth. I was listening to, looking at a program, Minister Farrakhan was talking, and all he said didn't electrify the crowd until he sung them songs of Zion.
Right. You know
when he
why?
started singing, everybody, but see, it wasn't necessarily how he sound, but what he was singing.
It was the words of the song.
Right.
You see, that's what it was. See, we used to call them tear jerkers. You see, because what they did, they made you feel. They made you feel mournful because you was a stranger in an unknown land, and you couldn't go back to that land.
And how can you sing the songs of Zion in the strange?
Right. They required us, Murph. People say, hey, you darkies, sing one of them songs. And we sing while we work, and they love to hear those songs. But see, this was Yahweh. Yahweh put it in their heart to love those songs.
Right.
Simply so that we can keep those songs in place for a while. Even the name of those old churches they come out of the book of Genesis. We had to keep those in place until my generation came through. Then once my generation came through and became adults and began to teach the word, you notice how they start changing the name of churches? Big Miller Grove.
Right.
Name
after streets.
Right. And George Smith's Tabernacle and and all that stuff. Right. But none of the if you notice, they didn't take any of the names. They don't take any of the names of the churches that Paul set up. Right. You see, they take strange names.
But they take Paul's doctrine and say, hey, Paul is our guy. Paul is almost the Messiah in many churches.
No. They take the part of Paul's doctrine that they want to take. Paul was a staunch Hebrew Israelite.
Right, that's true.
I mean, Paul had even taken some Nazarite vows, brother. At one time, Paul knew how he stood at one time. You know he wasn't standing right with God, but after the work that Paul did, I mean, Paul was so holy, he walked by people, man, and people take his apron and put on people and heal them.
And you know, you got them hirelings out there who perverted that now.
Oh, yeah.
They send people peanuts and all
right.
kind of stuff.
They're after your money, though. That's what that's all about.
True.
Paul wasn't after no money. Paul was after getting the churches started.
Ike told you, Rev Mike told you, said he got 19 Rolls Royce. I want to get back. I want to get away from the calendar. One thing about the calendar is interesting. I noticed on the first page here, it says Yahweh's calendar system. Why did you all feel it was necessary to explain the calendar system?
Well, to show people, here's another part of the deception. You see, Moses told our people that Yahweh had gave the nations those idol gods to worship. Okay, so what they did was, Yahweh said, he told our people that Abib was the beginning of the year, the beginning of months. Okay. And it makes sense because it comes in the spring. Okay. You see, it's when the spring of the year comes, when stuff started to go out of the ground and so forth. So what happened was, the Romans were the ones that was in power, so they changed the beginning of the year to put their calendar in place, their solar calendar. See, we have a lunar calendar. Okay. And they changed their year to put their calendar rather to put the solar calendar in place. And what they did was they changed it to January after Janus, the two-faced God that looks into the past and in the future.
That's where they get them resolutions and all that junk from.
And then New Year's come, they show us this little baby, right? Okay. This the new Janus.
Okay.
You see? And then at the end of the year, they show us the Grim Reaper with the sickle in his hand, right? Okay. All these things is tied up with the paganisms of the nations. See, the nations worship the sun, the moon, the stars. If you don't think so, look up the names of the days of the week. They worship men. Look up the days, the names that they named some of the months. Look up the names that they named all the planets and so forth. See, we talking about the nations did this thing. Now, what the Christians say, well, we conquered these pagans that practice that worship that sun. We conquered them in the name of Christ. You see, but yet and still they changed the Sabbath day from Saturday to Sunday. You see, and all the paganisms that we got. That as far as Christianity is concerned, all the paganism that we have today came out of the Roman Catholic Church. And the doctrine that they have, they cannot prove in the Bible. Right. They cannot prove. They can go in there and read a couple of verses and say what that means, but they cannot prove that doctrine in the Bible. Right. And as long as they have brothers and sisters around, they're studying their book. I don't mean, you know, you talk to people, they say, well, yeah, I read my book last night. Yes, what they read? The New Testament. Nobody reads the Old Testament. And this is the thing that people has to learn how to do, is not just read the beginning of it, the ending of it, go back to the beginning of it and pick up the beginning of the story. I mean, who's going to go spend $80 for a book and just read the last 16 or 20 chapters? I read the whole book. Go back and lay a foundation, and when you get through what you do, you find out that there's something wrong. See, this is what we do at NCCI. Right. About every 6 months, we come from Genesis down through the resurrection, show you what you're going to have to do to receive this salvation that's going to remain on this earth after the Messiah comes. You see, and this is what man don't want to deal with. And this is why when we go to other churches and read our book, this is why we are ostracized by the church. You see, simply because they know that thing they're doing is a lie. The churches know that Yahweh's Sabbath start Friday at sunset. The churches know that Christ was not born December 25th. Right. You see, and the churches know that, if they should know rather, they know that it was the Roman Catholic Church that set up them holy days, especially that Easter thing, which is one of their most holiest days, right? To go up on Stone Mountain talking about who he's risen. I'm looking around saying, who? Right. Who's risen? You know, I'm looking for somebody in the air or something, you know, because I know when my Lord rose. And see,
they talking about the S-U-N.
Yeah, right. Because Satan is the angel of the sun. See, what they did, the holy days that we got, they set those days up to mimic our days, just like the Day of Atonement we have. The holiest day in the year, they got Halloween. You see, we got, when our year begins, the Messiah was killed on Passover. Right. He was unleavened, without sin, the next day, and the next day he arose the first fruits to Yahweh, right? All according to the law. Right. Then he stayed with his disciples, right? And then there was 40 days, and then what happened? On the 50th day, after he had ascended back up, on the 50th day, what happened? On the day of Pentecost, the Spirit came. Our people were still gathered together, and they had come from all the known parts of the world where our people had been scattered to keep those holy days.
Well, that's our indication that the Around the World report is coming up, so we'll come back and deal a little bit more with the calendar and our topic last week, the beast.
This is the Signs of the Times Around the World report. Remarks by First Lady Hillary Rodham Clinton topped the news this week, but only briefly. The First Lady spoke out in favor of a Palestinian state. The statement was out of the news in a day or two, but the impact was certainly felt in the breakdown of the latest rounds of the U.S. brokered Middle East peace talks. Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu is now taking his case more directly to the American people, since the presidential cat is out of the bag. No known connection, but the U.S. also announced that it will sell $6 billion worth of Lockheed-made war equipment to the United Arab Emirates. The Bible warns all nations of the consequences of interfering with Jerusalem. The problem cannot be addressed out of its religious context because of the history of the region defines the present. Zechariah 12:1-3 reads, The burden of the word of the Lord for Israel, said the Lord, which stretches out the heavens and lays the foundation of the earth and forms the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all people round about, when they shall be in siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. In that day I will make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. The following contains information originally aired on the Around the World report on November 3, 1997. Now that the U.S. has truly bungled the Middle East peace process, this report is even more relevant than ever. The entire world is becoming polarized against the United States. Politically, Iran and Iraq are both poised for conflict with the U.S. Another political snare that the United States could fall into involves the so-called Middle East peace process. The failure of the peace process contributes greatly to worldwide sentiment that the U.S. is impotent to bring about a lasting peace in the region. Most students of Bible prophecy know that the latter days will be marked by a peace contract signed in the Middle East. This prophecy is recorded in Daniel 9 and verse 27. Eventually, the world will have a single leader. Whether he be called president, king, CEO, or secretary general, he will be the one leader of the world. This is simply an inevitable progression. This is what the worldwide movement toward democracy is building up to. This prince that shall come, as Daniel calls him, will also have a moral philosophy. Such an individual must certainly have much more than a philosophy that is attractive only to intellectuals. This leader must have charm, charisma, good media presence, and more. A platform of tolerance will be used to mask the underlying satanic doctrine of relativism. As the absolute power corrupts this leader, he will eventually exalt himself to the status of a god. This is nothing new in human history. The Egyptian pharaohs claimed to be gods, as did the Roman emperors. A leader in a democracy has, in effect, the mandate of the people. And from elsewhere around the world, in Pakistan, blasphemy laws impose the death penalty on anyone convicted of insulting Islam or the Prophet Muhammad. A Roman Catholic bishop committed suicide last week to protest the death sentences. His funeral and burial spawned riots. The World Health Organization reports that over 11% of the population of Rwanda have the HIV virus, largely because of rapes committed during the recent genocide. 2/3 of the world's AIDS cases are in sub-Saharan Africa. The globe is reeling from other pestilence caused by abnormal weather patterns. Insects are supposed to be extremely numerous this year worldwide. Weeds and snakes are also predicted to reach record numbers due to warm, moist conditions in many parts of the world. And finally, Dragon Meets Bear, an official, direct, secure telephone hotline has now been established between Russia and China. A treaty signed last week will soon open a similar line from China to the White House as well. That's been the Around the World report for tonight. Now back to our regular program.
American Negro, this is your life, past and present. This is 1998 Hebrew calendar. We have with us tonight the elder priest of the New Covenant Congregation of Israel, Yaakov Ben Israel, and we welcome your phone calls at 770-559-2999, 770-559-2999. Elder, I want to, you touched on the point, I just want to deal with it for clarification's sake. You said something earlier, you said solar calendar, solar calendar system and the lunar calendar system. What did you mean by that?
Well, Yahweh set up, you have to understand, the reason why Yahweh gave us a lunar calendar is because you can always tell when the beginning of the month comes.
Okay.
You don't have to count the days.
Okay.
You can always tell when the beginning of the month comes because every first day of each month, every 29 and a quarter days, 29 and a half days, you got a new moon. You see, so our calendar was set up so that we could see the different phases of the moon. Remember when he told Noah that these things, Adam rather, these things were set in heaven for signs and seasons and so forth and so on. Well, that's what they are for. The moon cycles are for signs and seasons. So he gave us this this calendar. As a matter of fact, people even plant by the cycles of the moon.
Okay.
You see, and it's a known fact that when there's a full moon, a woman have an easier childbirth on the full moon. You know, so what Yahweh did was He gave us a lunar calendar to follow, and because the nations were worshiping the sun anyways, and He didn't want us to become this. The sun give light to everything, so they worship the sun, and but He gave us a lunar calendar to deal with. But let me show you what they did with that. He kind of made mention of that in a couple of prophets. In the prophet Isaiah, chapter 23 and chapter 24 and verse 1, it says, "Behold, Yahweh makes the earth empty, and makes it waste, and turneth it upside down, and scattereth abroad the inhabitants thereof." Now listen to the reason. It says, "The earth also is defiled under the inhabitants thereof, because they have transgressed the laws, changed the ordinance, and broken the everlasting covenant."
Right.
You see, so it said, "Therefore has the curse devoured the whole earth." You see, simply because man has changed God's law, and man does what he want to do, and this is the reason why we have so much pollution.
Right.
Now, that was Isaiah that said that in the year of BC 715. Now, if you go back in Revelation, it said the same thing. In Revelation's 7th chapter and verse 25, when it was talking about this last king, it said that he shall speak great words against the Most High, and shall wear out the saints of the Most High, and think to change times and laws.
Okay.
You see, so the nations has changed things, and it has to deal with their paganisms.
Okay.
You see, and it also has to deal with keeping us in the dark as to what year it is,
right,
what time of the, when the year began and so forth. So what it got us off into is this. It's got us off into practicing the paganism of the nation. They named all the names of the days of the week. There was numbers before. And it said, Yahweh told us, don't let me hear the name of pagan gods come out of your mouth.
Right. Right.
You can't even talk with the brother nowadays without mentioning one of those names.
Right.
So what they did was Satan, called the adversary, the devil, has devoured the whole earth, and he has the people following him to destroy us as a nation of people.
Right.
Didn't Daniel say they're going to destroy the mighty and the holy people? John the Revelator said the same thing. Well, look at us.
Right. Right.
If the Messiah don't come and save us, we're going to be extinct as that dodo bird.
Well, Elder, there are many other things here in the calendar. There's a section here that talks about NCCI, who are we. I see Yeshua, the Hebrew Israelite. Gene engineering, has man reached his fullness? And, and as a matter of fact, there's an article here talking about the new creators. What are your thoughts about this gene splicing and things of that sort?
Remember when they was trying to build that tower back in the Genesis, right after the flood?
Okay.
Yahweh said, seeing that they begin to do this, nothing is going to be withheld from them.
Okay.
It wasn't anything they was going to be dealing with on their own.
Right.
It'd be things they're going to be given, right? So what has happened is this: to clone man, to have a bunch of robotics.
Okay.
Walking around here on the earth, brother. This is what they were planning on getting off into, so they can program people to do exactly. It takes. See, we can be programmed,
right?
But the programming lasts so long, and then they got to reprogram us because we get to burning up stuff.
That's true.
So. But that's well, it's true. Every time we have a riot,
to help our neighborhood.
For the fire, right? We ain't got nowhere to stay again.
Right.
But anyways, that's what they're getting off into, is cloning man to make them some supermen to fight their wars.
Right.
See, well, once they get all of these laborers on the hand, then they have no need for us anymore. We're already a liability, so what you think going to happen to us as a people once they get off in it? Now, I've heard someone
pay
say...
off that debt, or either they're going to pay that debt out or go bankrupt. Before you make that point, let's go to the phones. We have a call on the line. We're at 770-559-2999. That's 770-559-2999. Caller, are you there?
Yes.
When you call, please turn down your television and just talk to us through the phone. Go ahead, caller. Go ahead.
Hello?
Yes, ma'am. Go ahead.
Yes. My name is Crystal Hollinger. I'm calling from Stone Mountain, Georgia.
Okay.
And first, I'd like to say that I love this show. I raced home from work tonight just to get here in time for this show.
Thank you.
And there's two things I want to say. First, I was calling to try to see if I could get a copy of the calendar.
Okay.
And the second thing is to the elder, I'd like to say, I just had this very discussion with my girlfriend last night and her brothers. And it's so hard for me to convince them how important our culture is, and knowing our culture and knowing where we came from. We were talking about just friends of ours that are in prison right now that might not even be in prison if they understood our culture and knew that we were from royalty. And what do you suggest the best way for me to come about? Some people say, well, you should be quiet about these things. I feel that if I be quiet about this information that I've gained or this knowledge that I've gained, then I'm just as bad as those people that are out there teaching what the false prophets are teaching.
Okay.
So what do you think is the best way for me to convince people that our culture is more important than even the money that we make on our jobs, I think?
Okay, well, let's get the elder's thoughts. And what I want to do for those of you who would like to get a calendar, you can reach us after the program. You can call, leave your name and your number with the person that answers the phone, and we'll see if we get you a calendar out to you. Also, Elder, give us the address where you're located so they can call and write or what have you.
Where we're located, the organization name is NCCI.
Okay.
And we're located at 3711 North Decatur Road in Clarkson, Georgia. And the zip code is 332.
Okay.
And we're in Suite 104.
And it's 44299-7200. It's 44299-7200. Elder, she was talking about culture, and I wanted to ask her a question. What was she thinking in terms of culture? But tell us, what is our culture, and how do she convince her friends and people of that sort?
Well, we're Hebrews.
Okay.
And our culture was the only culture that was given by God Himself.
Okay.
When we came out of Egypt, we had been down there 430 years, and Yahweh gave us 10 commandments, which really broke down into 613 laws, statutes, and judgments that He said were His ways for us to govern ourselves by.
Okay.
And He said this was our righteousness and our wisdom, knowledge, and understanding among the nations. But see, what the nations did to dumb us down was tell us that, well, you don't have to keep the law. So see, Paul said you're not under the law, you're under grace. But when we look at the law that Paul was referring to, Paul was referring to the sacrificial laws. You can't just go and start reading there. You have to go read all around there and find out what he was talking about. Can you imagine God trying to judge the earth without law?
Okay.
It's impossible.
Man has law, so
right.
I mean,
but he said God can't have.
Well, why don't the planets and all the stuff run into each other? Why do you fall when you jump off a cliff?
Man, I guess man think he controls that, you know. But anyways, I think the best thing she could do is every scrap of information that she can get, send it.
Okay.
It doesn't make any difference what he believes in. Send him the information. If you got a brain, have him do some research on the information. Then if you have any questions, then we can always dialogue. We can send him information from NCCI. We can give her information to send her information that she come by and pick up. She can send him information. But it's one thing to have this information. It's another thing to read it.
Well, let's go to
understand it.
Let's go to the phones there. We won't try to get as many calls in as we can. Last time you was here, we didn't get as many calls in, so let's see what we can do this time. Caller, go ahead. You at we're at 770-559-2999. Caller, go ahead. Caller, are you there? Do we have a call? Okay. Well, we'll catch back up with that call. There's another section in here, Elder. I know we've talked about it before, but to actually see it is a different kind of thing. There's a section here called the clean and the unclean. Now, other than you having some dirt on your flesh and you go wash your hands, and you always hear Mama say, wash your hand before you eat and things of that sort. Other than washing our hands and bathing ourselves and things of that sort, what is there else to being clean and unclean?
Well, washing of the hands and the washing of pots and cups, like the Messiah said, those were traditions.
Okay.
You know, what a man needs to do is wash his body up. But the way the man has to do that is through not only his spiritual understanding, but he has to do that through his dietary laws too.
Okay.
So Yahweh gave us, in our culture, he gave us dietary laws, sanitary laws, civil laws, laws concerning birth. You name it, there was a law there that pertained to what should be done by this so it would be acceptable in his sight.
Part of the culture.
Right, you see, so just like he told us, the flesh of the swine you shall not eat nor touch his dead carcass. Well, people say, well, God made it, it's all right. But see, what I read is, I read what he had to say.
Right.
And they said, well, Christ nailed all that to the cross. Then when I read the new covenant pertaining to the first resurrection, he said all them people that's eating swine's flesh and the mouse and all them crustaceans, they're going to be consumed together. You know why? They're in violation of his law. Because these animals make you unclean.
Okay.
You see, just like
catfish.
Right, stuff like that. You can't eat anything that come out the water that does. He told you, say, don't eat anything that come out the water that does not have scales.
Wait a minute, man. Come on now. You know that popcorn shrimp is a favorite among people.
That popcorn shrimp and that pork is causing more people to die than cancer.
Let's go to the phones. Caller, go ahead.
How you doing?
Fine, sir. Go ahead.
I have a question. During the time of the Messiah, when he was on the earth, were the Israelites then? Were they in? I know they had Roman rule over them, but were they in captivity then, or were they just had a pressure over them at that time?
Okay, good question.
And I have another question about that. Since y'all were talking about our diet, I had a conversation with one of my friends at work, and I was telling him about not eating swine.
Okay.
And he said, we went back into Timothy, and he was saying if we pray for it and all that is fine. We had a little argument over that. I want you to expound on that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, sir.
Well, your first question as far as when the Messiah was living, what had happened was we was under occupation by the Romans. So we was in our land, but we might as well have been in captivity because we still had overseers over us. Our preachers, the Pharisees, the Sadducees, and the scribes, those were the overseers that the Romans had handpicked. And our high priests, they had put them in power to keep down turmoil because we had a group of people called the Maccabees and the Zealots, rather, that was going around trying to take our nation back from the Romans. You know, of course, this God had prophesied this captivity in this unknown land, and that had to come about. This is why we didn't overthrow the Romans. You have to understand what had happened. The Messiah had came, right? He had gave us his laws, statutes, and judgments. Then he sent his son through our people, right? Well, there was no need for us to stay in the land. And we wasn't doing what he said no ways. Our fathers was living just like they're living now.
Right.
They was practicing traditions instead of the law. And that's what got us in captivity, practicing the tradition. Now, as far as what they read, when Timothy and Paul said all creatures of God are good, right, they all have a reason. See?
They all have a purpose.
Each one of them have a purpose, so it is good. But if you read the dietary laws told you exactly what you could and what you could not eat. And God don't change.
You couldn't even touch certain things.
Right. God doesn't change. See, what happened was the nations came through, and the nations were the ones say, well, see, right here it said this is good, so you can eat that. Well, that's what it say right there. Let's go back here. You telling me what one man say. Let's go back here and see what 5 or 6 other different men have to say, and then see what answer we come up with.
Preponderance of the evidence.
Right.
Let's go to the phones. Caller, go ahead. State your name, please. Caller, are you there? Do we have a call? Okay, as we wait on that caller to come in, here's another section here that I'm sure is very interesting. It says signs of the time. One thing I see here, though, that's interesting, it talks about some of the false prophets, some of the things, the pestilences that's coming up on the earth today. As a matter of fact, over in France, I think it was France or Spain, there was just recently a big mudslide. Recently, we've been having a lot of mudslides and big rains and earthquakes and things of that. So I mean, these things have been going on, but not as frequent. And then there's El Nino that's out there. What about some of these signs?
All these signs are coming up on the earth, telling these pharaohs on the earth to let my people go.
Okay.
See, each time before our deliverance, if you get back, go back in the Egyptian captivity. Look at the plagues that Yahweh sent upon the nations. But see, the thing of it was, Yahweh himself had hardened Pharaoh's heart so that Pharaoh wouldn't let our people go, so that he would destroy. When we left out of Egypt, Egypt was a desolation. It was the power of the earth.
Right.
Well, look at it today. America is the hammer of the earth.
Okay.
When we leave out of here, according to the prophet, she's going to be a total desolation. Any place that our people has been on the height of the hill.
Right.
But see, what man has managed to do, my brother, is this: man has managed to deal with us with some things. We so quick to believe people instead of doing research. They always said, I've heard it say, if you don't want the masses of the black people to know something, put it in the volume of a book with no pictures in it. And this is what happened. We don't do the research. We go to church and we be entertained.
Right.
And we come and we think, it's some groups out there that got a lot of knowledge.
Right.
But you know what they do? They all make that same turn and say, there's no respect of persons with God. If there's no respect of persons with God, why did God make all of his covenants with one seed in this book here? Why did he, why is it that one nation of people wrote this book here? But people tell me, why wasn't the apostles come from different nations of people? All of them was Hebrew Israelites. And do you know that the two of the greatest secrets in the world is that the Messiah, that they call Jesus, Yeshua, he was a black Hebrew Israelite. Now, they don't tell people that. They say, oh, yes, he was probably black. Well, if they say you probably black, he wasn't an African. We know that he came out of Israelite, the Hebrew Israelite nation, but you notice the people never talk about his lineage, because his lineage, my brother, would lead right back here to us as a people.
Let's go back to the phones. Caller, go ahead. State your name, please.
LeGrant. Can you hear me?
No, sir. Go ahead.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
LeGrant. I was wondering, have any of you been looking at the series that Fred Price out of Los Angeles has been given every Friday at 9 o'clock on TCN? That's a series that every black family in America should have once it's completed. He's talking about race, racism, and religion. And that's the most dynamic, most informative piece of information that I've seen ever.
I mean, that's good. Thank you, Carl. That's good that you feel that's the most dynamic. But I remember a time when, and this is not to necessarily criticize or put down anyone, but I remember a time when Fred Price came to Atlanta back in the early 80s, and he was back at the Dome, not the Dome, the Georgia World Congress Center, and he was teaching people how to speak in tongues. And I found that to be very interesting, because I watched that program before, but I found it very interesting that here's a man who can teach you how to speak in tongues, and it happened miraculously during the days when you spoke of on the day of Pentecost. But here they tell you, just breathe, make your lips move, and that's still going on here in Atlanta. He has other ministers, churches set up around the city that does the same thing. Let's go back to
Fred Price has said something else too. Fred Price, I watch his program, and what Price has also said, he said that on one program that we were the Israelites.
Oh, did he?
But now he's changed that. You see, so you have to understand what's going on. He's a Christian minister. So, and he got satellites that has to be paid for. And he got partners that has to be paid. So he's going to do what his partners tell him to do, or he's going to be off the air. And he's going to go so far with that, but as far as telling you that you're the Hebrew Israelites, I mean, coming right out, going in the scripture, picking up the two black races and leading you right down through that and showing you who we are, bringing us right here to America, he's not going to do that.
You know, it's interesting, the caller said that is the most dynamic series he's seen, but apparently he hadn't watched the program. We've been here for 5 years, and we've been talking about some things that many people dare to talk about, especially as it pertains to who we are as a nation of people. So if that's the most dynamic, then I think you need to tune in to us every Monday night at 9 o'clock. And also just want to just at 8 o'clock. I'm sorry. Don't tune in an hour later. Every night, every Monday night at 8 o'clock live right here. And also, as I mentioned, we also have another program in the city of Atlanta called Signs of the Times as well. It reruns over in the city of Atlanta at 2:30 on Monday evening. So tune in either here or there, and you can pick us up. Elder, just want to touch on a couple other things here in the calendar. Here's a section here that says, "This is the curse." And then we also got an area here talked about the brutal middle passages, and then the auction block and chattel slavery, the American way. Several other very interesting things here that I think would be very good for people who choose to get one. But let's go to the phones. I see we got people flagging at me here. Caller, go ahead. State your name, please. Do we have that call? It's 770-559-2999. 770-559-2999. Caller, are you there? Go ahead. I guess we lost that call. Elder, one thing we talked about too, and I think it's even some mention of it here in the calendar, talking about the beast. We talked last week about Mother Earth. Mother Europe. Right?
Hello? Hello?
Go ahead, caller.
Yes, I would like to. I enjoy looking at your program.
Yes, ma'am.
And I just want to find out a little bit more understanding about Jesus Christ, who he really was, and what was, the purpose. I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to say it best as I can.
Okay.
Because I've done a lot of listening to you guys a lot, and I'm really enjoying them, getting a lot of education from it. But I don't understand him. Jesus Christ, who he is, and why do the Hebrew Israelites do not accept him as a prophet? What is it?
That's interesting, but Elder can go into it a little further. Unless you want me to go. Go ahead.
Thank you so much.
Sure.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
The Messiah was the seed that was promised in the garden that was going to bruise Satan's head. The Messiah was the one that was talked about that would be the son of David. The Messiah was the one that he told in Abraham, shall all the families of the earth be blessed. The Messiah was the Passover lamb. The Messiah was the atonement sacrifice for the house of Israel. The Messiah is King and God of this earth. Now, whether some Hebrew Israelites believe in it or not, all they have to do if they wish to deal with it, if they come and want to sit down, most of them like to fuss. Right. If they want to come and sit down and we read some scripture together, the Bible verifies that the Messiah, Yeshua, is the Son of God. And he was sent for a reason. See, Yahweh gave us that animal sacrifice. Man, that lamb didn't do nothing. Just because you kill that lamb doesn't make you no better.
Right.
You kill a lamb every year and you still got to do everything you want to do.
True.
So what he did was this. He prepared a perfect sacrifice. It was impossible for the blood of animals to take away man's sin. So the Messiah said, "Lo, I come. In the volume of a book, it is written of me to do your will, right. Yahweh." So he came and took away the first testament so that he could establish the second testament of writing his laws in your heart and in your mind and being to you God and you being to him a people. That's who the Messiah is, the Son of God, the ruler of this earth.
I think the misunderstanding comes in with the whole thought of Jesus Christ. This first and last name kind of thing. I think that's where the misunderstanding come in. But you
translation.
Yeah, I think that's what the problem is.
It's basically a translation. He had a name and a title.
Right.
His name was Yeshua, and his title was Messiah, Christ, as they call it.
The anointed.
The anointed one. See, that was a translation thing, but he didn't have a first and last name. All of us, if you notice, all the people in the Bible, the writers had one Bible, right. One name. Matthew, Mark, Ezekiel, Jeremiah. It was understood.
Jeremiah the prophet.
Right. It was understood that all our last name was Israel.
Let's go to the phones. Caller, go ahead. Caller, are you there? Do we have that call? We're at 770-559-2999. Caller, are you there? Caller. Okay. Well, we talked, like I say, a little bit last week about the Mother Europe, and and I just can't get over some of these pictures in this calendar. But
it's fabulous.
Oh man, it is awesome. This year, it is awesome.
Yeah,
but,
I prayed about that. But look here, I thank Yahweh for that calendar there, brother. Yeah, thank him, for that, brother, because that's the best we did yet.
Brother, this is awesome. We talked about Mother Europe, the beast, and we may not have an opportunity to go into it in detail, but give us some general understanding about Mother Europe, the beast. I mean, what's his purpose? What's his origin? Who is Mother Europe?
The sister they called a little while ago. She said people been telling her to keep quiet.
Right.
This is something you better not keep quiet about, because this one world governmental system, the prophets tell you, this system is designed to destroy us.
Right.
Now, if you look at our estate today, when the Romans came on the scene, we was in our land, brother.
Right.
During all the empires, we got put out of the land a few times, but we always made it back to the land, didn't we? But the Romans, man, when the Romans got through with us, we was dropped through the cracks of history. Nothing has been written about us as a functioning nation since that time. And I think what people should be more concerned with is not too much as what America is doing, because we can see that. What they need to be concerned with is what Europe is doing.
Okay.
See, because that system started over there, and it's going to end up back over there. The king and all those people that's going to come from that European continent, and they're showing you they're getting together now with that euro they're putting on the market.
Right.
They're getting ready. And they're getting their armies together, all those federated nations coming together, right? They're trying to make all these people.
Elder, flagging me. I know that's one of them cliffhangers, but one thing we can do, we can always get in touch with you at 442-999-7200. We can come see you at 3711 North Decatur Road, Suite 104, Clarkston, Georgia 30032. Also, you can write to that address. One quick thing, I lost it, but we know we can come see. Right. We know we can call you. We know we can get in touch with you.
When you come.
Oh, where we can find the calendar?
You can find the calendar at quite a few bookstores.
Okay.
We have some. We're putting some on consignment in bookstores. It's brand new.
Okay.
Our year don't start until March.
Okay.
So it's brand new. You can find it at bookstores. And basically, what we try to do is try to do a mailing list. And if you send your name in to go on our mailing list, then we would gladly forward you a calendar at, we'll send you a calendar.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, brother. Appreciate it.